you're here. It feels really good. I have quite a varied background. Uh, I started out as a science major, math and physics, and then I got interested in Jungian psychology, and I drifted in the direction of Jungian psychology, but this was way back in the day when humanistic psychology was just launching, and Abraham Maslow had written his wonderful, exciting book, The Psychology of Being. I wrote him a letter. I said, I want to go study with you. And he said, you don't want to come here. It's a nasty place. You want to go to the University of Florida and study with Sid Gerard, who was the second president of the Society for Humanistic Psychology. And it turns out this is right, because Abraham Maslow was, as Michael Murphy often says, a humanistic Nazi. Very hard to get along with, and everybody else in his department hated him, so the graduate students were treated like dirt. So I went to the University of Florida and, among other things, studied with Sid Gerard before the car fell on him. I don't know, this was very bad. We were big in those days in Florida, and did like to work on his sports car, and the last words out of his mouth, he was under the car on a car. And that was it. I also met Tom Hanna there at the University of Florida with Sid Gerard, who later came out to California, started an institute in body work, and started what later became Sabra, which is still kind of the Center for Humanistic Psychology. But in the meantime, I drifted back in the direction it started in, biology, neurophysiology, and I did a dissertation, experimental dissertation, essentially in neurophysiology, and worked for a number of years as an experimental psychologist and biopsychologist. But I've always lived a sort of scattered life. So while I was doing this, I would sneak off to California for encounter groups, and it was during the period of humanistic potential, or the whole thing going on in California. So I did workshops in that, got very interested in consciousness, and was human potentials movement, I guess I should call it, in the late 60s. But I continued to hold down jobs at home as a experimental psychologist, biopsychologist, and sensory psychologist, because there were jobs in that area. Psychology departments don't have many people who can actually teach these things. So they're looking for somebody who can. So I always had a good career teaching brain science, perception, having my own laboratory. And since I was a passable teacher, this all worked out. But as time went on, I've gotten more and more interested in consciousness and the nature of consciousness. This is related to Eastern thought as well. I have been a meditator for 40 years. Got very excited watching those Kung Fu shows back in the late 60s. We would get stoned and watch Kung Fu and then think about how great it would be to be a Taoist, you know. In fact, I had a Taoist student once, and my wife said, you can't call him grasshopper. And I said, listen, I'm going to call, this is a term from Kung Fu, the show they called, you know, what's his name, grasshopper. I said, I'll call him grasshopper till he finishes his dissertation, which he did, and I had to quit calling him grasshopper. But I've continued to have this interest in spiritual matters, Taoism in particular, until I met the person who was going to be my own guru, I guess. That was Swami Rama, who taught, well, it was pretty traditional Hindu yoga. Raja Yoga, and so I've been a meditator ever since, and continued more and more to pursue a career in consciousness studies on the more philosophical side, and I built up the Society for Consciousness Studies over the last few years to over 200 members now, and was president until recently, and I still run the listserv. If you're interested, we can talk about that. There are over 200 people on the consciousness listserv right now. And they're hot at it even at this minute, arguing about whether consciousness is electromagnetic or not, or whether electricity is even relevant to the brain. I just love it when I can get these things going and just watch them, because that's sort of why I started the listserv, so people could have these dialogues. So, and I was very fortunate at the last conference I organized, which was partly at Yale and partly the Graduate Institute in Connecticut. I was honored to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award, quite by surprise, and handed to me by Deepak Chopra. So I feel pretty good about that. And oh, there's Magdalena. Hello. And so that's where I am right now. I'm sort of at a point where I have worked really hard to develop the society, and now I've stepped down as chair. I'm going to continue to teach at CIS for at least for the time being. And Magdalena and I are actually working on a couple of books together. One of them is going to be something about the outer limits of human consciousness, and the other one is based more on her dissertation, which she did right here in PCC with me as her chair, and she bought me an excellent bottle of scotch when she finished, so that's the right attitude. And her dissertation had a lot to do with maximizing the human being, using resources all over the place, such as technological resources, various agents that you can put into your body that will improve your performance or help if you're an Alzheimer's victim or something. Gee, I don't want to get into this too far, but it really is an interesting topic. And today, there's so much going on around the topic of consciousness and technological assistance. For example, the big Tucson conference I'll be going to in a few weeks has a whole section now this year on direct brain stimulation. It's something that was really kind of way out on the edge a few years ago, and now you can kind of go to Walmart's and get yourself a brain stimulator and stimulate your brain electrically, and everybody claims it's safe. I haven't really tried it, but people I know try it and they seem to get high. I don't know. One colleague said, I said, what's it like? He said, well, it's sort of like having a beer. And you know, I said, well, what if you do twice the brain stimulation, is like having 2 beers? But he never really answered that. So we're working on a project where we're looking at ways, technical ways, as well as traditional ways to maximize the human being, and also exploring what we call the outer limits of human consciousness. So that's more about me than you want to know. I don't know how many people we have here now, but if anybody, whoa, 28, my heavens. So if anybody, my intention was to be available, if anybody wants to ask questions or make comments or anything, otherwise I'll bring some topics up. Well, my idea for this thing tonight was to pick some topics such as the outer limits of human consciousness, or of consciousness in general, was to pick some topics that are of interest, have always been of interest to me, but don't usually get much treatment in academia. It's what my old biology teacher called weird and wonderful ideas and topics. So here, I've rearranged the list that you may have seen, so it's a little different now. But here's a topic to start with, and let's see what y'all have to say about it. Mythic beings, black dogs, banshees, leprechauns, fairies, brownies. Are they real? Are any of them real? If you live in Ireland, you hear a banshee before somebody dies.
And the mini hoonies.
Oh, tell me that. No, I don't know about the mini hoonies. What are they?
Well, I'll tell you a mini hoonie story, which is actually interesting. Mini hoonies are the leprechauns of Hawaii, and they are very.
I didn't know they had leprechauns.
Well, they're little. They're not leprechauns, but I mean, they would be like a leprechaun as far as they're little beings, or they're just little teeny beings that are very mischievous. And I went there years ago. I've been there a few times, but the one time I went there, I couldn't find my shoes. And I was like, there's no mini hoonies. There's no mini hoonies. And
Yeah.
God, somebody put my shoes up on top of a cabinet that I did not put it up there, and I swear it was the mini hoonies. But they're little mischievous creatures that play tricks on you all the time in Hawaii.
Well, you know, brownies are just the opposite. They live in the kitchen. You don't see them in the daytime, but they come out at night and they do helpful things.
Oh.
Oh yeah, so brownies. I think they're mainly Irish as well. Irish have an abundance of these sorts of things. That reminds me that you know, when Carl Jung would return to his home on the lake, he would go out and he would talk to the pots and pans and knives and so on, and sort of make peace with them. He says, "I know I've been away, haven't taken care of you, but here I am back, and I will love you," and so on. And you know, this is strange, mythic kind of stuff, but as a good Jungian will tell you, back in the Middle Ages, if you got crossways with your sword, you'd be dead on the battlefield. You had to take good care of your sword, had to treat it right, have the right attitude towards it, and so on. So a lot of local people, I think almost everywhere in the world, have different kinds of local creatures that live there nearby and have certain functions. Professor, my doctoral committee professor when I was a graduate student, was Irish, and his grandmother always kept a little door in the kitchen so that at night these little people could get in and out. And you know, they were fairly serious about this. So I don't know what to think about this. There are all these different kinds of fairies. Are you familiar with black dogs? In England, they're sort of like black cats. You know, you don't want to see too many of them by mistake. Yeah. So that's one of my topics: mythic beings, and whether they. Somebody's written there are elementals everywhere. Well, elementals. Now there you go. You want to tell us how elementals are different than these, or are they like spirit creatures that live in the trees and brooks and so on? Well, I know these sorts of creatures are everywhere in traditional cultures, and so we could talk a lot more about that. Okay, well, I'll move on to another topic. Strange dreams. Now, I know you all have had precognitive dreams from time to time. So how reliable are these? Clairvoyant dreams? Are you familiar with what's called the dual dream? They're pretty rare, but it's when two people have the same dream at the same time. Although they may not be near each other. One may be in Boston and the other one in California.
I've done that intentionally with a friend, which is pretty amazing.
Ah, who said that?
It's Diane.
Who said that?
Yeah.
So you were able to do that.
Yeah, we were able to do that. We set up, we were close, and we said, let's share the dream space. So we arranged where we were going to meet. Like we picked the sort of central plaza of our alma mater, we've been to Flinders University. Yeah. And so we said, we're going to meet right in the middle of the plaza at Flinders Uni. Okay, so we went off to sleep. And then in my dream, it wasn't Flinders, it wasn't the plaza, but it was the big bridge that goes from the main university across to the residential area. And I met him on the bridge, and we were standing on the bridge talking and looking. It's a very tall bridge, big, deep valley, looking at the trees. And then when we woke up, I said, what happened to you? And he said, well, we didn't meet on the plaza. We met on the bridge over to the hall. And I went, yeah, me too. But his experience of it was he was really afraid of the height and the tree.
Oh, really?
I had a very positive experience, but then he just didn't like the height and the trees. But we were in the same place, and we were having a very different emotional kind of experience of the dream.
Well, you were both having out-of-the-body experiences, too.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I mean, you were out of your body, weren't you?
Or we could have been just non-localizing our consciousness.
I guess so.
Interesting that we both met on the bridge instead of the agreed place. Like, you know, he could have been in one place, I could have been in another, but we both met on the bridge. So that was
Oh,
pretty
interesting.
fun. Yeah, yeah.
Is that the same
Okay,
thing?
well, I see.
Is that the same
Go
thing?
ahead.
Being out of the body and non-localizing your consciousness. What's the difference?
Well, for me, when I go out of my body, a part of me is actually traveling, like my etheric body is actually moving, sort of through 3 dimensions, but non-locally. I mean, the same information is everywhere, it doesn't need to travel. So all you're doing is basically kind of accessing the files from the same place. That's how it feels anyway. It's got a different feel to it.
Anything else? Hudson,
Yes,
speak up.
I've had both experiences.
Hudson, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. So I've had both experiences, shared dreams and out-of-body experience. And as
I do now. I'm having some problems with the sound. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to turn my video off. Sometimes that helps the sound.
Yeah, let's do that.
so do you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, so I've had both experiences, shared dreams and out-of-body experience. And for shared dreams, we had a group a while back, like 20 years ago, and we were focusing, that was the time that everybody was practicing Carlos Castaneda. And yeah, we had this meetup places that we would go.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, and it was interesting, and I had both experiences. In out of body experience, I went to my friend's house, and there was a public phone booth there, which in reality it wasn't there. And then I talked about it to my friend, and I realized that there used to be a booth there. So I was kind of there in a different time zone, but the place was the same. And we had some common dreams, like we would go to some place and we would meet each other in astral bodies. And shared dream is a little bit different because, for example, we would have this dream that we are going to, I was dreaming that I was going in a place and there were people, some light bodies, they were working on my body. And I talked to my friends and they said, oh, we know that place, it's called hospital. So we often go there and they do these treatments on us. So
interesting.
Yeah, that was some of my experiences. It was really interesting. And also out of body experiences when you're traveling in the dream, like they told me that if you think about a place, you would be there. There's some techniques that you have to apply when you're traveling in your astral body. So
I'm told that there are a lot more people that have out of the body experiences than you might think. And they're not always positive. In fact, some of them really have trouble getting back in.
Yeah.
You're breaking up a bit, Allan.
That was a very strange experience for me, and I got scared, and I should have followed it. But every time I would leave the body, I would get scared, and then I would go back. I was a young man, and I don't know why when you get old, these things are a lot harder to do, but I used to have a lot of weird experiences. Now at my age, I hardly ever have any, I guess. Things could be worse. But I'm told that this is a problem for a significant number of people. I have no data on that. Does anybody know anything about it? I'm just really curious. I mean, you just waking out of your body and can't get back or whatever.
I know it freaked me out, but my concern.
I've had a number of what.
Yeah, we need to stop the videos. It's breaking up the sound.
Okay, I'll stop the video. Go ahead. See if that helps.
Yeah, my second out-of-body experience that I knew as an adult, I got a certain distance away and then I freaked out, and the thought was, oh my gosh, if I'm not in my body, then anything could get in. So I just zoomed back really fast, and I didn't.
People worry about that. You know, I try to develop myself as a yogin enough to have really control out of the body, but I've never really succeeded. So, but I felt like there was a way that you could become, you know, your own master, whether you're in your body or not. But it's not something I've been able to do.
Breathing helps. If you concentrate on breathing in, breathing out, it will help you get back in your body.
Good tip. What about the one where someone contacts you in a dream, a stranger contacts you in a dream, and you can verify it later?
I heard part of that, but I don't know. Is there, Matt, is there anything we can do to, maybe more people need to click your video off?
Yeah. All the videos go off, it will get better. It should get better.
Yeah, because I'm having a lot of trouble.
Sure. I think what I'm noticing is everybody's video is and sound is perfect for me except for yours, Leslie. And I think that's well, and this might not be the case for everybody, but I think that is because, did you say you're in Chile, Leslie, or where are you right now?
I'm in Ecuador, but I have a very high-speed internet. I'm going to change like servers somehow. Now I'm up to a very fast one. Does it, that sound any better?
Yeah, it sounds good for me. It's just every now and then there's a delay, and I think it's what I'm noticing is it's only on your for you, Leslie.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's the case for everybody or what. I think it works if you turn off your video, and maybe others can do that
because
too.
I have a incredibly fast internet. Okay. Well, let's go on to the next topic I've got, and that's dreams. I guess we're already talking about dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Cognitive dreams, clairvoyant dreams, dual dreams. How many of you have had false awakenings?
Oh, yeah.
Horrible. What is that? What is that?
You know, it's when you wake up and you suddenly realize, oh shit, I'm not awake, I'm still dreaming. And so you wake up again, and I've had as many as 3 or 4 of these, and after about 3 or 4 of them, I start getting scared. Again, something happened when I was much younger. But false awakenings aren't that rare. How many have had false awakenings?
Yeah, I'm Lisa. I had a dream that I was dreaming in my dream. Like, so
yeah, there you are.
Like I think I woke up in the dream and then said, wait a second, no, this is still the dream. And it was because I was talking with my husband about
so how did you know you were still dreaming? What was
because when I finally woke up, I remembered having the dream about telling myself in the dream that I was not awake. It was this was just a few weeks ago. So.
Well, I went, recently. Well, I knew I was still asleep because I looked out the window and it was the wrong landscape. That's not what's outside my window. And now there is a way to wake up, I should say, if you want to wake up. You start with your fingers and toes. You know, when you're dreaming, can folks hear me okay?
Yeah.
When you're dreaming, your body's essentially paralyzed. Sometimes people wake up and the paralysis doesn't go away for a while. It's very scary if you're not used to it. But start by wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes, and wiggle your arms. And you can wake yourself up. False awakenings. Well, that's one of the unusual dream experiences. sometimes people have powerful precognitive dreams. And these happen often when you're younger. Somehow they happen a lot when you're in love. I don't know why. Mark Twain had a famous dream some of you probably have read about. Can you hear me? Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, it's when he was a young man working on the river, in Mississippi River, and he had gotten his younger brother a job on another riverboat. And he had a dream that he'd come to a particular port up the river, and he walked in a funeral home, and there were a series of caskets set out. And the one in the middle was a metal casket, had flowers on it. Somebody came in and put flowers on it. The rest were wood. And he had heard there was an explosion on that boat, but he thought his brother had survived, but he didn't. When he got to this town, he walked in this building, and there it was, exactly like it had been in his dream. The silver casket, metal casket with the wooden caskets on either side, and a lady came in and put flowers on it. That deeply affected Mark Twain. For the rest of his life, he felt some wonder about the greater universe and what happened there and what that was all about. So I've had a lot of dreams, and you probably have too, that were minor things. You foresee things and you later have the feeling that you've actually experienced it, but occasionally there are these powerful dreams, and I've never had one quite that powerful that predicted the future. So, strange dreams, that's one of the topics I've listed as a possible topic this evening. If you're interested, Stanley Krippner, along with a couple of other folks, have published a little book on strange dreams and how to work with them. And I don't remember the exact title, but you can look up Stanley Krippner at any book outlet. And actually, if you email me, you're really interested, I could send you a PDF copy of the book, actually. Quite a nice little book. So, dreams, let's see. I wanted to talk about communication with deceased relatives through mediumship, simple sense of presence, or in dreams. How many have felt some contact with someone who was deceased?
I think
Yeah.
I'd like to share a story.
Oh, please do.
I'm a little shaky doing so, but you know, it kind of relates to all of this. My whole life, or at least like every maybe 7, that magic number of years of my life, I was having a dream set at my mother's parents' house where I pretty much grew up, and it focused, it was back in time, and it would shape shift, but the reality is that I was having premonition dreams of my grandmother's death. So every 7 years I would have this dream, and it would change a little bit. There'd be less and less people, and the sequence would pretty much same, with it ending with this female character walking down into a grave. And then the night that she was dying, which was around when I was 28 years old, I had a final culmination dream of this triple dream came together in a fourth dream. And I knew she was dying, and I woke up, to that message from my mom that had happened. And in that dream, my grandmother, and I believe a big part of her, went into my body, and she was telling me that this is it, that I'm dying. So ever since she's passed now, the only time that I see her is in dreams. And we always meet at her old house, in the garden where we used to be, or in the room that I used to stay in. Memories that we've had together. And I do believe, that a big piece of their soul or spirit or consciousness, especially because it's the maternal end, goes into us, and probably went into my mother too and her other daughter. But I mean, dreams have been the most powerful for me, especially because of that one. And
Right.
you know, I've also had precognitive dreams about floods, about fires, about things that are kind of terrifying, whether they happen like the next day or within a week or a month. But the one with my grandmother was really set for my whole life. I was having this dream over and over and over again. So, you know, it takes a lot of patience too sometimes in seeing how the dream unfolds. But the phenomena
So
is,
this was like every 7 years you would have this dream?
yeah, and it would change a little bit. The storyline pretty much stayed the same. What mostly changed was how many people were in there. And it would slim down until the end of it where it was just her and me.
Right.
There's a lot of details around that too, but yeah,
We have a close connection with her. That's pretty clear.
yeah, I
Do
grew
you
up.
feel like the connection has continued then after she's gone her way?
I don't see her as often as I did. I was seeing her for a while in dreams, especially when I really needed her. I needed somebody. She would come and meet me at the house. But what
Yeah.
connection has stayed is that pretty much every single dream that I've had throughout my life is always set at her house. And it's still that. I mean,
Oh,
it's
that's
not their house
interesting.
anymore, but it's still set at their
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
So the architecture of the dream and the foundation always remains the same, whether or not she's actually there.
Well, you know, it's surprisingly common for people to, and I saw a lot of hands a minute ago, for people to experience the presence somehow of a deceased loved one, either in a dream or, in my case, it was an uncle I was very close to, and I just felt like he was hanging around the house. It was very strange. It wasn't scary. It's like, you know, somebody's in the house with you. And after a few days of this, I thought, what's he doing around here all the time? And you know, it sounds awful, doesn't it? But really, I mean, he obviously had passed on to the next world, and hanging around my house was not doing him any good. So I said, look, you need to be looking for the light. You need to be searching for where your next, you know, where you're going to go. Look for the light. Don't hang around. And it was very strange. I got this very concrete message back from him. It was like, oh, why didn't you say so? He was gone, just like that. So, but I'd say well over 50% of adults have had some kind of dream or waking experience of the deceased person still being real in a way. So, any other reflections about that? Yeah.
Allan? Hi,
As
this is Carol. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to connect and share, because one of the things that I love PCC, the PCC program, but I've felt really awkward sharing my mystical experiences. So thank you, everyone who shared something
oh yeah, let's hear him. Yeah, I love it.
for me. Thank you.
Some of mine too. Yeah.
So I was widowed at the age of 28. I actually saw my husband's soul leave his body, and that seems to
Oh
be
my.
the gateway that opened things. So I've had lots of training of various sorts. So lots of people, institutions, whatever I could give credit to. And Raja Yoga meditation. You mentioned that, Allan. I was so impressed. Yeah, Raja Yoga meditation, that's the key.
That's what I do.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to wear that mantra out eventually. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. So for the last 8 years before coming to CIS last fall, I worked with clients in the Washington, D.C. area doing intuitive life coaching, energy healing, therapy.
Right.
I had been trained at a center in England, the Self-Realization Meditation Healing Center in England, along with my Western degrees. And they had said, you know, you can talk to souls at a distance, you can talk to souls on the other side of death. And I had started having clients who would ask me to do that. And it started with 2 young women, and they were friends, and they each had a soul from a past life they wanted to connect with. And so my first really powerful experience, well, other than the experiences with my late husband, which, you know, they didn't happen except in a dream in the first 12 years. Then after 12 years, there was like, you know, contact when we needed to, a lot of forgiveness work I've had to do. But anyway, so back to the client. I just channeled this being, and the being was like, you know, a little person in the air in the middle of the room where we were meeting. I, you know, I have 2 scientific degrees to begin with, so part of me was, I've had to, you know, get over my resistant skepticism so many times. But what happened at the end was the soul on the other side, I could, you know, and I could see him kind of in miniature. He turned to me and he said, "Thank you." And I thought, well, I would not have imagined that, you know. So it's gone on from there. And then I have a client who, unfortunately, her 24-year-old son committed suicide by hanging himself in their home. So very tragic for the whole family. She had already asked me to connect with her late brother who had died or disappeared. So she brought her daughters immediately to me right after that son died and asked me to channel. And that was a beautiful experience. It was painful. I was just sobbing while channeling him because he was so sorry for what he'd done. He took instant responsibility, decided to commit to helping other lost souls on the other side. So like light worker over here, but light being work over there. So the really hard work to undo his karma. And then her other son was depressed. I mean, the whole family struggled, obviously. Her other son got depressed, and he ended up a couple years later dying of a supposedly accidental opioid overdose. And he tried to work with him a couple times, but his mom wouldn't tell him that she was paying me to work with him. So it was just, there was only so much I could do when he was alive. But then she asked me to start connecting with him, and we had ongoing, the way I do it is both, and for out-of-body experiences during healing work, at distance healing, and for on the other side, I work with the 7 archangels of the 7 rays. I count on them. I've discovered Archangel Uriel can also help access past lives. Again, it's for this client. She's wanted to clear all the negative energy in their family, so we've done a lot of work. And anyway, so connected with the son who died, who's actually the older one, died of the opioid overdose, and he's really struggled on the other side, and the other brother showed up and helped.
I'm going to ask you to hold that now, because we need to move on. But thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I will say that there are people, you're one of them, who make these connections. Emanuel Swedenborg was famous for talking to people on the other side. You know, he would stop at the dinner table, have a conversation. Many of you are familiar with Edgar Cayce. You read the Edgar Cayce material. And when he was in trance, he would suddenly stop and talk to some relative that had been gone for a year or two. And how is it doing over there? So they had this conversation. I have a friend by the name of Chris Hardy, who's one of these people, and she's written a book called Living Souls in the Spirit Dimension. Not published yet. It's sitting on my desktop waiting for me to give her an endorsement for it. I don't know what to say about it. She seems to talk to people on both sides just effortlessly. And so that's the way the book's written. No, it's a wonderful book about death and dying, so you might watch for it. Living Souls in the Spirit Dimension will probably be out in 6 months or so. So I would love to talk about this more, but I think I want to cover some other topics. And if there's enough interest, maybe we can have another meeting later and get back together. Again, I would love that. It's an hour, 3 hours later here, and we're past my bedtime, actually, got my age. Cosmic consciousness and mystical consciousness, that's another topic that a lot of us are interested in, but we don't hear that much about it. The term cosmic consciousness was coined by, as many of you know, by a fellow named Buck, who wrote a book in 1901 about cosmic consciousness that it was very influential on William James, among others. Walt Whitman was a kind of a mystic who seemed to be in this higher state of consciousness all the time. And those of us who are interested in mystical experience, I'm sure, have read or know about Hildegard von Bingen, Meister Eckhart, and others who have had these remarkable experiences. Hildegard von Bingen was, I think, a wonderful example of a mystic, also all-around genius, very capable woman. There's a movie about her, a German movie called Hildegard, that does a good job of showing her practical side. But it's sort of like the Gandhi movie. You don't get the mystical side very well, but still it's quite a good movie. So cosmic consciousness or mystical experiences. I can talk about this and hear you talk about it from now on, because it's what really drew me into consciousness studies. So does anybody have anything they would like to say about cosmic consciousness? Or we could go on to ecstatic states, meditation, samadhi, satori. My teacher used to, when he'd sit in front of an audience, like I'm sitting in front of you and everybody was silent, he would say, "Oh, you're all in samadhi." Mm-hmm. Because his favorite thing to say was, when you're in samadhi, you have no questions.
Huh. I
True,
think,
yeah.
I think somebody found the raising the hand button. So, Ozin,
okay.
Do you have a question there?
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you, Matt, for doing that.
Yeah. My question is that I have had a lot of these experiences, but what I'm more interested in is the kind of experiences that you cannot relate to brain capacities. Like, for example, I can imagine that I have somebody's dead, and then I have a dream about that person. I'm asking some questions, and this person answers me, gives me good answers. But to me, that doesn't mean that that was a real experience. It could be a projection of what you have of that person in your mind. So what I'm interested in is a kind of experience with a diseased person or an entity that you did not have any way to know about that information. You know what I mean? I'm trying to separate the experiences that
you're breaking up a little for me. You're saying the kind of experience that the person just didn't make up or couldn't have just made up?
Yeah, I'm trying to separate the real experiences with what is really, with what is, what can be an extended capacity of our brains. You know what I mean? And a lot of projections that we project a lot in our dreams. And we are in conversation with our dream figures. But I really want to know if there's consciousness after life, if there's a proof that if somebody is diseased, they're still conscious. And just asking questions and receiving answers is not a proof to me. You know what I mean? The only experience that I had was a friend of mine, her father was diseased, and she used to be in contact with him, and he told her something in her dream about my personal life. That was very interesting because she had no way to have that information. You know, that was the only experience I can say was not related to brain capacities. Thank you.
Well, here's an interesting one. There's been quite a bit of research on mediumship, and a few years ago, a European minor chess master died. and he was contacted through a medium and continued to play chess. People analyzed his games, and they looked very much like the ones that this person had played in life, except now they're being transmitted, the moves are being transmitted through the medium. And what really got interesting is they said, well, look, this game you just played is reminiscent of the game you played a number of years ago. We have on record with, and they mentioned the name of his opponent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure my voice.
We can hear
Okay.
you.
So they mentioned the name of this opponent that he had played in life a number of years ago. And he said, this game looks a lot like that. And he said, oh, I don't know. I don't recognize that name. I don't know who you're talking about. And then a little while later, he said, oh, you're talking about so-and-so that's pronounced differently in Eastern Europe. It's a different, you're pronouncing the name wrong. And so he corrected them on the name of this other chess player that he was playing with. So there was this whole analysis of the chess game he was playing from the other side, and he was even correcting them on how to do the name. So that was an interesting story anyway. We're getting messages typed here. Matt, feel free to read those. I'm having enough trouble keeping up with what's going on right here on my screen.
Are you asking me to read the quotes or the questions on the side?
Yeah, if you feel like it.
Yeah, well, there's a whole conversation going on, and which is quite interesting, and people are sort of sharing resources. Some of it seems a little personal, so I'll let those people, if they have a question, to just kind of chime in. I mentioned there's a hand raising button, I think, that some people have found, so feel free to click that. Or if anybody has a question, just go ahead and ask away.
Yeah, if you speak up, I can hear you. I would love it.
Hey, this is Greg. I'm not unmuting. I'm not unblocking my video, just my microphone. But I was.
Yeah, I hear you well.
Okay, good. Somebody mentioned that their dog had died, and they experienced their dog jumping up on the bed. I was wondering if anyone experiences.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
I remember a story about a dog that died, and when they got a new dog, it always walked around the place where the old dog had laid all the time.
Yeah, I had a good friend who was a dog who died, and we spent a lot of time together afterwards for several months. And I was just wondering, if anyone had any other stories like that, I'd be interested.
Greg, that was me. This is Christina. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you well.
That was me that mentioned the dog. My dog Gus died in July, and the first time I experienced that, his presence, I was meditating on my couch and I felt something thud next to me, and there was nobody. I live alone, nobody's there, and I didn't pay much attention to it, but then it started happening with much more frequency and sometimes with an awful lot of movement on the bed, and I was a little frightened at first, but I'm getting used to him being there. He jumps up on the bed and sleeps next to me. I can't see him, but it's, the sound of and the feel of a dog when he jumps on the bed. It feels like that, only there's nothing physically there, but the bed's moving.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories to that, similar type of sort of physical perceptions of animals that weren't there. I have not experienced that, and I'm just wondering if anybody has any thoughts or theories about why in some situations that is the case. In my case, spending time with my dog after he died was in the dream time, but I am interested in people's experiences, but I, for one, am interested in kind of situating with them within you know, energetic or consciousness based, or, you know, some type of theory or understanding on why that is.
Can I say something, Leslie?
Please.
So Greg, I have a friend who's a healer from Siberia. She's from a long tradition of healers in Siberia. And she told me that their belief is that animals, even though we all have a shared consciousness, animals they actually live in the shared consciousness, she said, much more than we do. And that often when an animal passes, they merge. If there's another pet in the house, they'll merge with that other pet or a nearby pet, and you'll start to see them pick up some of the traits of the old pet. So, you know, they have an ability, this is what she said, an ability to, you know, expand out into the world more than we do. I don't know if that's because their ego is not like ours or what.
That's beautiful.
So
I mean,
I
sorry.
have a comment. I have a comment about that might relate to what you're talking about. That's really interesting. The dog that I had that died. One of the things I learned, I work with a medium that's helped me, a healer, and one of the things she told me was that through my relationship with this dog, an English bulldog, he understood himself as an individual being, and that he was now helping the bulldog group to individuate.
Oh, that's really interesting. Let me, can I say something real quickly about that? It reminds me of the mother, Aurobindo and the mother.
Yeah.
And she would occasionally refer to their cat. And she said, oh, that cat's about to become a human in the next lifetime. Of course, the mother said a lot of weird things, but I got a kick out of that. But
Yes.
listen, I'm going to say something that's a little bit more sciencey here. One of the great scholars of unusual phenomenon was a Englishman by the name of Frederick William Henry Myers, F.W.H. Myers. He was a good friend of William James, and he made up half the coins, like half the terms, like psychotherapies, or not psychotherapy, telepathy is a term he made up. But he felt that when someone lives in a given place, and I don't see animals might be the same, over the period of time, they develop a kind of subtle presence, a subtle body, or something that will continue there even when the soul is gone. And so some cases of haunting, like Michael Murphy from Esalen had some very strange experiences in old Scottish castles. And Myers would have interpreted that more as a residue of the previous person living there than actually a living ghost. So there's this possibility that either animals or humans after a time build up a kind of pattern that may continue even when they're gone. I'm just throwing that out as a free association.
Is that like a
Make what you
morphic
like of it.
resonance? Is that like a morphic resonance?
Something like that, I guess, on the subtle plane. But he felt that a fair number of instances of seeing ghosts and so on were really not what people think they are, that there were more people being aware of this sort of lingering, subtle form. You know, there in the 1800s and early 1900s, there was a lot of research on mediumship and life after death. It was actually a passion after the Civil War. So many people had died, and then mediumship came along in the US, spread to Europe. And all the researchers, William James included, had their own mediums, did a lot of research on this topic. Some of it's really fascinating. Oh, here's a cat. All right. Anything else?
Is it possible that if time is nonlinear and everything's happening at once, but things are at different levels of perception, that sometimes maybe it's a ghost or a lost soul, or sometimes could it be that it's just another level of consciousness that is happening at the same time, and some people can perceive it and some people can't?
Well, I wouldn't deny it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I was reading a book recently that about time. It's called Time Loops. I'd have to look at the author because there's several books by that title. Just a young man came to Esalen recently and gave a talk. Maybe some of you have heard him. And he feels that a number of experiences people have something to do with time. Things happening, being aware of things that haven't happened yet. Evidently, Philip K. Dick had this kind of stuff happen to him all the time. So this book, Time Loops, is quite good. If anybody writes me and asks me the real title and author, well, that is the real title. I can send it to you. I had a little trouble finding it because there's so many books with that title. So, given the fact that it's 11 o'clock here and way past my bedtime, yeah.
Hi, Alan. It's Samantha. Hi.
Hi, Samantha.
Hi. Quick question. How similar is the Akashic records and cosmic consciousness? Is that the same?
They're not the same thing.
Okay.
I can't tell you what the Akashic record is, except you probably know as much about it as I do. That it's a kind of record of everything that's happened, and if you can tap into it, you can become psychic in a way. We have a good friend that graduated from CIS a few years ago. It's a good friend of Jocelyn's. Jocelyn, are you still here? She could, she could tell us. Mm-hmm.
Baxter.
Yeah, there's Jocelyn. Who are we talking about here? Your friend who's a psychic?
Mary Baxter.
Mary Baxter, and she's pretty amazing, and she claims to read the Akashic records.
Yep.
All I can say is that she usually gets it right, whatever she says. But cosmos is not the same as cosmic consciousness. Consciousness is consciousness. It's awareness, and in some sense, it's always either empty or filled with whatever you're aware of. So it's really different.
Right. So it's a time difference. Quick second question. With string theory, there's a mathematically proven about 11 dimensions, speaking of time. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about the mathematical computations getting closer.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. These mathematicians, they want another dimension. They just write another, they just write another vector into their equation. They got themselves another dimension. But, no, I was reading somebody making fun of this today, but it's really true. Hey, you want another dimension? But when we talk about the spirit realm, the realm of spirits and the afterlife and so on, the word dimension there is more metaphorical. Certainly not the same thing that mathematicians are doing. By the way, this whole thing, since I'm a professor and always have to act like a professor, there was a very popular book in the late 1800s. It's still out. It's called Flatland or Flatlander. And because at that time, they thought that a lot of spiritual phenomenon took place in the fourth dimension. And the Flatlander is a little book really written for children originally, I think by a school teacher, about people living on a flat plane, two-dimensional. And then when anything would enter that, like if you would push a knife through the plane or something, this would be like a miracle. So Flatlander was very influential to the idea that there are other dimensions, and they meant real dimensions. They weren't thinking metaphorical. And this had a lot of influence on spiritual thinking, and believe it or not, a lot of the early modern artists. A lot of modern art that was created in the first half of the 20th century I'd have to go back and look. I'm too tired to remember names right now, but artists thought they were painting images into this fourth dimension, a spiritual dimension. So they were, in some sense, conflating or at least thinking of a literal fourth dimension, the spiritual realm. But I think when we talk about another dimension spiritually, we're not talking about a vector that's 90 degrees away from the other vectors and so on. It's just a different kind of concept. Other questions?
Yeah, Leslie, I've got a question. And this sort of came from somebody else, but the question was something like, you know, if so much of the work we do is aimed at trying to reach a higher level of consciousness, or you know, stay at a sort of higher vibrational frequency, or however you want to refer to it, but we're sort of, you know, you have something like the coronavirus, right, which sort of brings us right back into a kind of fear-based way of interacting with the world, perhaps. The question was, you know, how do we sort of navigate that? Is it more, you know, is this, I'm sure it may differ, but just, I guess, curious how to balance a sort of real world that sort of makes us come back into these sort of lower vibrational energy fields versus sort of maintain a kind of higher frequency. Is it a matter of ignoring it? Is it a matter of embracing it? You know, so that was the question. And I suppose that's okay.
Well, it's a good question. I'm not, and obviously, but I certainly can't answer it in any ultimate sense. I will suggest the idea of achieving higher states and higher levels of consciousness may not be the best program. Not that you shouldn't do it. I work on it myself all the time. But if I take a more Zen-oriented view, life is more about being balanced, well-grounded, and centered than it is being high. There's a wonderful book when I was young, we all read it, called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Can't recommend it enough. Came out in 1970. I can't pronounce the first name of the author, but the last name is Suzuki. Soyunro Suzuki, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. What's important about him is he was recognized as one of the great spiritual masters of the age. Suzuki was very clear that he was not enlightened, never became enlightened. He lived a Buddhist life, followed the principles of spiritual Buddhism, and, you know, that's what it was about for him. And so I'm getting more and more that way in my old age, since I'm not in samadhi all the time. More and more it's about being grounded and living right. I don't know whether that's an answer or not, but that's my answer.
Thank you.
Well, I've got some other topics, but I'm kind of, I'm running out of neurons.
That sounds totally understandable.
It's after 11 for me here, you have to remember. But we've brought up some wonderful topics here, and there are other ones that, I mean, near-death experiences, I'd love to talk more about that. Animal consciousness, I'd love to talk more about that, or for us to talk more about that. Collective consciousness and intersubjectivity, we've only just basically touched on that. Entheogens and psychedelic substances, and whether these really can give us real spiritual experiences. I'd love to talk about that and have us all talk about it. And I've even got a section on close encounters of the third kind. Would you want to reschedule me sometime way down the line for, you know, part 2 to continue our dialogues?
Yeah, that sounds good. We could probably do it sometime in late May or June if you're around, and if others are as well.
Well, hopefully I'm not going anywhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. We tend to do these on Thursdays. Sometimes, though, other days, just depending on
No,
things.
I can work on that, and if I'm not around, I'll get you a good medium.
Absolutely, cool. Well, hey, what I was going to suggest is, because I know you know, there's a lot of great conversations going on. So what I can do also is, Leslie, you're welcome to sort of, you know, we'll all give you a round of applause in a second. And thank you very much for staying with us and hanging out tonight. And then if anybody, I'll just, because we were scheduled to go to 9, so I'll just leave this up. And if anybody wants to continue talking about their own experiences, I can stop recording. And anybody can just continue conversing, and Leslie can dip out, and everybody else can dip out too. And that's an option as well. So let me.
So you see people saying thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
so
this is a great venue you've created here, Matt. So keep it up.
Thanks. Well, I certainly did not initiate it, but there have been many before me who have been responsible for the different reiterations of the PCC forum. So if everybody could just, you know, give Leslie here a round of applause for hanging out with us for a little bit.
Thank you so much. We love you, Leslie.
And we'll send out a round 2 soon enough, I'm sure.
Okay, and let me just say that I live online all the time with my work and so on. So if anyone would like to email me, please feel free. Or if you would really like to have a personal conversation, we can work that out. So keep in touch.
Terrific.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Good night. Bye.
Good
Lovely.
night.
Love you, Leslie. Bye.
Love you too.
So I'm just going to stop the recording right now. If anybody has any questions for other people,